Shut up! I was born in 1946 in Baltimore, and I was born 2 months early. So I was baptized over and over, and that's what's the matter with me. All the original sin was taken out of my soul. So basically that gave me a good start for being perverse right from the beginning, to not fit in, and my parents were scared of me. So I used to design an amusement park ride called The Crush, and it was like the Ferris wheel, and I'd have bodies going up, but then they would be crushed coming down. It would show bloody corpses. I think that's a normal thing kids do, isn't it? I was ahead of my time, yes, in the worst sense of the word. I had a great imagination, and I learned early that my interests were never what anybody else was interested in. Freak shows were incredibly important to me. The world's largest rat, they used to have that at the fair here, and it was great. I wanted to see the world's largest rat and a picture of it. I didn't want to go to the baseball game. I had scrapbooks, I had imaginary friends. I had a stage in my house that my parents sort of helped me build. My parents are very conservative. They were mortified, basically, but the same way. I think they knew, well, if he doesn't do this, what would he ever do? So they were encouraging. I was a puppeteer when I was a kid. I had a children's birthday party circuit where I did sometimes 3 shows a week. I got $25 a show. It was a lot in 1958, believe me. And the parents always liked it. I have people still in Baltimore that come up to me in supermarkets and said, you know, you give a puppet show at my birthday party. It's really weird. My mother was Catholic, my father wasn't. So I went to private school. So on Sundays, you had to go to Catholic Sunday school where they really were mean to you and told you you were going to go to hell because your father wasn't Catholic. It was the Marquis de Sade in a skirt. That's what the nuns were like. And they used to read us these list of movies that we would go to hell if we saw. I would have never heard of these movies if they hadn't told them to us. And so I used to redesign ad campaigns of hideous movies and pretend I owned a dirty movie theater. As soon as I hit to being a teenager, I was too embarrassed to be a puppeteer. So I heard about underground movies that luckily had just come out when I was about 15 and 16 years old. So I was obsessed by them. I used to run away to New York and go to them and read about them in the papers and the Village Voice and get Variety really early. And I always liked the movies that you weren't supposed to see. I have this mustache because I wanted to be Little Richard. I grew up with Elvis Presley. I thought I was Elvis Presley. I played rockabilly all the time. I collected records. I loved the rage of rock and roll. My parents took me to be on the Howdy Doody Show. It was the first huge hit American television show. I thought, it's all a big lie. This is what I want to do forever. It didn't freak me out. I saw that the stage was this big, there were all these cameras, it was completely fake. So I knew I wanted to be in show business really early. I remember one thing they said that was weird, that they were against us watching Ozzie and Harriet, which is the most typical American, because the woman was too strong in the household. She didn't let the man make all the decisions. These people should be arrested. Not only did they abuse people sexually, they told people that.
I don't know how it happened.
This is the shot where they're walking the dog right up the street, right before Divine Eats Dog Shit. This was where Pat Moran and Chuck and Greer and Brooke lived. They fed the dog in there for a long time to make it shit, and we walked it around the neighborhood. It would never go. So we just had to follow the dog. We didn't care if people were walking around or anything. Just if the dog was going to shit, Divine was going to do it.
When I was 4, he would come to the house, and I was in the 3rd floor window, and he would come screaming for me, and I would run to the window, and he would tell me to jump. And my mom would come running out the front door screaming, no, 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 she does anything you say, she does anything you say.
Jump!
When I was little, had really long hair, and it was always back in little barrettes, and I had patent leather shoes on and a smock dress, and John was kind of a hippie-ish, I mean, not hippie, but he had longer hair and dressed in dark colors, and he was taking me, and they said, oh, little girl, you're so cute, where are you going? And I said, to the movies. And they said, what are you going to see? Thinking I would say Bambi or I don't know. And I said, the Bloody Pit of Horror. And we scared a few people that way.
I'd be a terrible father. I'm a good uncle.
I was born into the family, so to speak, being the son of Pat Moran. I thought that every family made films every other year or every summer.
Brooke is nude in Desperate Living when he was 9.
John had a major part in making us Cinepups, not just with filming the movies in the summertime or in the spring, but bringing Greer and myself to low-budget horror films and any movies that came out. I would buy the popcorn, and he'd pay for the movie. That was the deal.
Brooke grew up in all my movies. He plays a naked kid of Peggy Gravel in Desperate Living that she catches and says, nude, nude, all the children are having sex. He traveled with Divine when he was in school. We all went to his graduation in school with Divine. He works on all my movies. He has from the very beginning, and I feel great confidence in that he knows exactly what I want when we're shooting a movie.
John always had a vision, but when we got on set, back in the early days, we didn't have all the equipment. So I remember as a kid running to the store for this, running to the store for that, throwing this in a blender and making it look disgusting.
Progress is mixing. Travel cures all races. The problem is racists never want to leave their own neighborhood.
Record 510 Boston Run, 34 taxi Alpha, Hope
At the very beginning, I used to come out and we didn't have anywhere to sell the pictures, so I knew that I had to be this character that I had to sell, basically, because we didn't have any other ads. So I used to come out and introduce the movies a lot and bring Divine out. And we would throw dead fish in the audience and kill cops on stage and do these kind of publicity things to get people to come see the movie. I wanted people to see it.
Here 911 Boston Town, cross approach 4 left, monitor tower 119.
I go to Provincetown every summer. I go swimming every day. I ride my bicycle. I love that. And I go to the Alps with my friend in Switzerland, which is really, I love cold weather.
We'll take turn right, proceed on course.
Being in the Alps is spiritual, and being in Provincetown is spiritual.
One year we all decided to come here, independently, here in Provincetown. And we just started, none of us knew we were going to arrive here until we saw each other here. And of course we had a great time that whole first summer. And he decided he was going to shoot his first color, full-length movie, 90 minutes. And he asked me if I wanted to be in it, and it was Pink Flamingos.
David Lochary was living here. Mink Stoll came in the summer, and Pat Moran. There were a lot of freaks that lived here year-round. There was a woman that walked backwards for a whole year because she took too much LSD.
Dennis Dermody was my really good friend.
John came up one summer. There was a murder in town one summer. This woman was found on the beach with her hands cut off. And John, for some reason, they didn't find out who did it. John got it into his head that I was the killer. And he would stop me at bars and say, I know you did it. I'll pay you $25 to show me the hands. I said, I didn't, but we started to become friends after that.
We all tried acid and smoked marijuana now and then, but it's phase.
In those days, I mean, midnight movies were kind of the thing. I mean, you know, like pictures like El Topo, but Pink Flamingos was a comedy and a different kind of a comedy. It felt new. It felt like something you'd never seen before. Because I had to work at the movie theater, and John used to say always, when people puke, it's like a standing ovation. Well, I had to clean it up, and frankly, I'd call him up and say, you know, you got 5 standing ovations last night, and I hate you. Because people would come so drunk and high. It wasn't because they were disgusted by the movie, believe me. It was because they were fucked up.
In his early movies, Bergman always had vomit in all his movies. Look at every one of them had a puke scene. He did puke first. I first came here really a long time ago, I think 1965, and somebody just told me, you ought to go to Provincetown, it's a weird place. I never heard of it, I didn't know one thing about it, so I just hitchhiked with a friend of mine, and we got here, and they were right, it was a weird place. It was a tiny Portuguese fishing village that turned into, well, it always was a gay city in a way, and a bohemian city where artists were and everything. So it's a gay fishing village. But we used to go to the beach, and when people would sit at their towels and go in the water, we'd run down and steal their pocketbook. There was this guy named Prescott, who was one of the first gay liberationists. He was about 80 years old, and he drove around on a motorcycle handing out free hot dogs and gay liberation to people. I didn't really work the first summer. I think I sold diet pills on a bicycle that you could get from the doctor here. He was the speed doctor in town, and you could go get diet pills. He was a kindly family doctor here. I'm not so sure he even knew it was speed, but you could get 100 of them and then go in the next day and say, I lost them, and he'd give you 100 more, and then give them a fake name so you didn't have to pay for it. So that's how I lived, and I stole bikes here. my first real job I had here was I first worked with Molly Malone Cook. She had a bookshop called East End Book. And she was great to work for because you were allowed to be mean to customers. Like if somebody said, do you have Valley of the Dolls, which was a bestseller, and she'd say, we do not have that book. Like you were so stupid to ask for that. But I only worked when it rained because then the tourists would come in the store. So wherever I was, if it started raining, I had to run to work. One time was beautiful dunes and trees, and now there's this.
Has John changed through the years? Yeah, I'm sure he has. I'm sure we've all matured in a certain way. To me, John's humor has stayed the same. I mean, there's a certain skewered quality to his humor that has never changed, and that was what drew all of our, friends to him, and vice versa. So, to me, a lot hasn't changed.
Well, on the set, I would say John's pretty much the same as he was in the early days. Of course, he has to work with a whole lot more people now than he used to. He used to do a lot of the stuff himself that other technicians do now.
The stepmother was my hero. I didn't like Cinderella so much. She should have stayed home and cleaned.
Oh, oh.